Okay, so this is the latest insider version of Windows 11 on Raspberry Pi, and it's pretty snappy. If I log in, you can see that it's super quick to log in, and it actually feels really quite responsive. This is the best version of Windows we've ever had on Raspberry Pi 5, and it's a strange one because it's not officially supported anymore. If I show on the Windows on our site, which is all about getting Windows on an SBC running ARM. If I scroll down, is Raspberry Pi 5 or newer supported? The short answer is no, we don't offer support for Raspberry Pi boards anymore. And there is a GitHub for the Uefi, which is basically the little boot partition that makes Windows work on an ARM device. And you can see here, Windows 11 build 25163 is the last one that can boot on the Raspberry Pi 4 and older. And if you try and use the image writer that they supply, so this Windows on Raspberry Pi imager, so download version 2.31, it won't let you write a newer image. So I've had to kind of go about it in a different way to be able to get it running. And the reason I was so excited about getting this build running is that finally Microsoft are taking ARM seriously, and we will start to see loads of ARM devices coming through. There's already some really impressive Microsoft Surfaces. There's a lot based on the Snapdragon Elite, and 24H2 has introduced something called Prism, and this is it's like an emulator for running x86 or x64 Windows programs on ARM. So this means that we'll have much better support, and I've been quoting 10 to 20% faster. So translated apps should run between 10 to 20% faster, but there are some bits in the story that say things should be twice as fast. And in my early tests, it does definitely seem snappier, and the programs are running better. I mean, Half-Life I showed in a shorts video. I'll go back to it in a minute just to show how well it runs. So I set about trying to work out a way of getting it installed, and I've managed to do it, but unfortunately you do need a Rockchip device and a Windows device to be able to install it. Actually, you could probably do it without a Windows device. I've been spending several days on this and finally got it running. And I'll show a tutorial at the end of the video on how to get it running using a Rockchip device. And I actually think it runs better on a Raspberry Pi 5 than it does on my Orange Pi 5 Plus with 16 gig of RAM. But I haven't done proper speed tests and things, so that's just how it feels to me at the moment, but I probably will do that in a later video. So let's have a look at it running. So if we just type in, say, YouTube. I showed a video recently running Chromium on ARM, because there is a proper ARM version of Chromium, and it does work really well. So 4K HDR. Oh, and let's put in Lee PSP video. The browser's been alright for a while on Windows, surprisingly, considering we have no GPU support. Let's just skip past that. And what are we running at? Probably 720 at the moment. I think that's probably about as far as it goes. I'll give it a go at 1080. You can hear the sound is perfect. Let's go to 1080 and see what happens. And if we turn on stats for nerds as well. Oh, where is it? Right click? Yeah. Depends what version you're using. So you can see it's dropping some frames at 1080. But considering we have no GPU support and this is Windows running on a Raspberry Pi, it's pretty good. So let's quit out of that and show a bit of Steam. So I've already installed it, and I've installed a load of games and been playing around with things. Definitely getting better performance on Portal, but not as good as I had using Wine on Ubuntu on the Raspberry Pi. But then that's because Wine was using GPU support. But Half-Life, yeah, really good. So again, sound is perfect. And if we jump into a game, we are stuck at 1080. We can't go lower than 1080, but you can see that it is super fast. Oh, I nearly jumped off the edge there. That wouldn't have been good. We can see there's a bit more going on here, but it's coping with it fine.
I had a bunch of messages for you, but we had a
All the audio's fine, everything. We'll have a little run around. and it is very playable. So let's quit out of that. And even older games, so I've got Elastomania, which just installed from an old exe file I had. But also if I try something like, I've got Office on here, not the Microsoft one, I've installed LibreOffice. So let's, where does it come up? Libre, because I was going to go for the PowerPoint one. I also have to go through LibreOffice here. And all the window snapping feels nice and responsive. So, and you've got this new one here where you can kind of pick what you're going to snap it to. I don't know if I prefer that. I think it almost adds a bit of complication to it. So if we go for Impress, and let's pick one of these and open. See, it's perfectly usable as a system because this has got loads of slides and everything on it. And we can import pictures if we just grab something off the internet. In fact, let's get Copilot to create something. So create an image of a BMX in New York City being ridden by a robot. And let's see what happens. There we go. Let's pick maybe this one. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And let's download that. And I'll save it in my pictures folder. And let's go back to the presentation and let's put it in on one of these slides. So let's pick this one and insert. Oh, Copilot's taking up a bit of room. So insert image and pictures, and here's the image. There you go. Super easy, and yeah, working very well. No problem with that at all. So we can do save, and it just is responsive. It doesn't feel like previous versions of Windows on Raspberry Pi. I'm really pleased with it. So unfortunately with this method, you do need to use a rock chip device to do the installation. And without that, you're not going to be able to get it onto Raspberry Pi 5. You can use an older version of Windows 11, and it does take updates, but you don't get the sort of cutting edge updates. And things like this Prism translation layer or emulation layer isn't going to be in it, and it could be a long time before it's in it. So anyway, let's show you the tutorial as how to do it. Okay, so first thing we're going to download a copy of Windows. So let's click on the browser and do WOR and Pi. And this brings you to home Windows on R. Let's click on that. Hover over guides and click on getting Windows images. And I was trying to use AdGuard, which I normally use, but it's not seeming to work at the moment. So let's go with UUP dump. And latest release preview build and ARM. And you can see here, Windows 11 24H2, this is the one we want. So let's click on that. Click the language and next. I'm just going to go with Windows Home and next. Download and convert to ISO, include updates and create download package. So you can see it's downloaded it here. Let's unzip that. You can see it's in a folder now. So we can just double click on this UUP download Windows and click more information and run anyway. Obviously do all this at your own risk. And yes. So I'm going to say R for run once. Obviously this process does take a while, so just bear with it. Okay, so that's all done. And this is the file, .iso. And if we have a look in the folder, this is the bit that we need, this 6 gig file. So let's copy that. I'm going to copy that to a USB stick because the next bit I need Linux for. So let's create a new folder I'll call it 001, and let's pop that in there. And that file's copied over to the USB stick, so I can take that out now and pop it into my Pi. So I'm running Linux now, and it's on my Pi 5. I've got an NVMe drive I'm going to write the OS to, although I haven't had success with NVMe drives yet. I've only had success with USB, but let's give it a try. So I'm running Linux from an NVMe drive in here, and I've got my USB stick with the Windows file on. Okay, so let's copy that Windows file over. So this one here, so copy, and I'm going to pop it in my downloads folder. And we're going to need Windows Flasher, which is a program which is available through Pi Apps. I'm not sure if I've got it on here already. No, so open up Pi Apps. If you haven't got it, I've got separate videos on how to install it. If you're using this version of KDE, it comes with it. So if we type in Windows and OK, and then we can click on Windows Flasher and install it. Okay, that's all done. Let's launch it. So just press the Windows key and start typing Windows. Oh, there you go. WOR Flasher comes up straight away. So we want to install more options on a Pi 5. Use a Windows ISO file. And we know it's in the downloads folder because we just put it in there. And this is the ISO file. And the drive that we're installing to, so it's picked the right one. This is the 256 drive, the NVMe drive. So let's hit next and flash. Okay, so it says failed, but I did have that before and it worked fine. And you may notice that I've switched operating systems. So it didn't work with KDE, it was coming up with an error, exactly the same process and everything. But now I'm running the operating system from an SD card and I'm writing it to the NVMe drive. I don't know if it's because it was two NVMe drives. And I also read the ISO file direct from the USB stick as well. And yeah, hopefully it's worked. So we can close all this down. Okay, so now what we need to do is to create a boot disk for the Orange Pi, and we're going to do that with an SD card, and we're going to go to this GitHub, I'll put a link in the description, and go to the latest release and download the version for Orange Pi 5 Plus. You can see each different device, and there are loads of them, has a different download. So Orange Pi 5 Plus is what we want, so let's click on that, and you can see that's downloaded. And these download as an image file now, so to write that, you'd actually use Raspberry Pi Imager. I don't know if I've got Imager on here. No, I haven't. So let's just see if we can install that. And you can get Raspberry Pi Imager for Windows, Mac or Linux. And I don't know where those two L's went. There we go, so yes. And then if we close that down, tap the Windows key and start typing Imager. There you go, Raspberry Pi Imager. So we need to choose OS and scroll all the way down to Use Custom. You can see in my downloads folder it's already picked this image file, so let's click on that and open. Choose storage. Well, I've got an SD card, let's just pop that in now. And it should show up, there you go, 32 gig SD card. And hit next, and no for customization, and yes. And pop your password in. And that obviously won't take very long because it's a tiny file. Now if you're installing to Orange Pi 5 or any one of the other Rockchip devices, you'll already have everything you need. But if you're installing to Raspberry Pi 5, because it's not really officially supported for these later builds, what you need to do is go to this GitHub and download this UEFI boot. So if we click on that, that will download. We can open it up and you can see, well, this particular one isn't a image file. They just need to be written to an SD card. You can erase an SD card with Imager using basically this method. So choose OS and erase, and then you would pick your SD card so it's completely formatted. And then you would copy these 3 files onto your SD card. And if I put my SD card in that I use for the Raspberry Pi, it's added some things extra because it's been booted, but you can see the 3 files are just in the root of this 2 gig SD card. Now if you try and install this with a UEFI boot disk designed for Raspberry Pi, you'll get this message. Couldn't find the installation disk, and it doesn't let you go any further. Okay, so I know this process works on this USB stick, but I'm going to try it on an NVMe drive because it will be faster. So I've got an NVMe drive plugged into the Orange Pi USB 3 socket with this cable, and I've also got a USB to Ethernet adapter, mouse and keyboard, and it's obviously plugged in. The UEFI for Orange Pi 5 is on this SD card, and obviously Windows is what I've written to this NVMe drive. So if I switch it on now, hopefully it will just do a normal Windows installation onto the Orange Pi 5. So on boot you need to press escape and then go into boot manager, and we need it to boot from this one to the Realtek. So if I'm going to press escape and go into boot maintenance manager, boot options, change boot order, and you need to click on this, click on the one you want with a plus on your keyboard. So just the one you would use if you were going to type a plus, and you can see it's moving it up the top. There we go. Then we can press enter and escape again and escape and yes to save and continue. And this is going to start installing Windows onto the NVMe drive from the NVMe drive. And you know when it started to work because that spinning wheel has come up. So you can see preparing the disk. Okay, so we've got to this stage, which generally is good if you get to this stage. I did have one crash and just basically turned it off, turned it on again. Sometimes you have to click on boot manager and pick the drive that you're trying to boot from, because it seems to want to go through all the possible different variations. So let's just say UK and your keyboard. So all of this is just completely standard, and we'll just end up with a running copy of Windows on the Orange Pi 5 Plus. Or you could use any of the other boards that use the RK3588 method. That should work just the same. So you don't necessarily have to have an Orange Pi 5 Plus. So as you can see, all working. We've got Rockchip RK3588. The clock speed is 2.18 gigahertz. All 16 gig of the RAM is there. So now if we want to use it on the Raspberry Pi, we need to shut it down. And let's transfer this all over to the Raspberry Pi. So unplug everything. I'm using the SD card I created earlier on. I'm going to try it in the NVMe slot because we're going to get much faster speeds that way. And you can see it's booting up. As you can see, it's all working. So 2.4 gigahertz with 8 gig of RAM. Windows 11 Home 24H2. But I did have to change the setup. So for some reason, it didn't boot from the NVMe drive on the Pi. It tried to, but it just kept spinning circle. And then I tried it in the Caddy, which unfortunately gives me slower speeds because it's going through USB 3 like it was on the Orange Pi. But I'll try it again and see if I can get it to boot straight from the NVMe drive. So this is what happens with the NVMe on the device. So it's trying to boot Windows because the wheel wouldn't be spinning otherwise. It would tell me it didn't find a boot medium. But it doesn't seem to go past this point. And on this occasion, it did crash. So I'm just installing Crystal Disk Mark because I want to see which is faster, the NVMe drive in the USB or my fast USB drive. I'm sure the fast USB drive is going to be much faster. So let's accept that. There we go. So let's launch that and let's just do a quick speed test. So I'm just going to use the standard settings as they are and hit all. Okay, so not great speeds as you can see. Let's boot this from the USB stick I was using at the start of the video and see how different they are. Okay, so looking at the first set of results, you can see that the read and write speed is nearly 10 times faster, which is really good on both of these results, much better. These results are also, 4 or 5 times faster, and the last two set of results were pretty similar but still faster. So definitely faster on this USB. Back on the Orange Pi Plus, I've been trying to get this to boot from the NVMe drive using the SD card for the UEFI boot, and I just can't get it to work. I've tried loads of different things. It only seems to work when I use the USB caddy. So that's why I use this USB caddy on the Orange Pi. Obviously it'd be a lot faster if I could get the NVMe slot to work on either of these machines, but at the moment my best option is a fast USB stick. So I'm back on the Raspberry Pi 5 now, and one other tip is if your USB Ethernet isn't working, because that's the only way you seem to be able to get internet on this version, if you unplug it and plug it in again, it should detect it and show up. I don't know why it doesn't do it on boot, but yeah, you can see it's detected it, and now I've got Ethernet. And this is how I've got it all set up. So not using the NVMe slot because it doesn't seem to work. I'm running the UEFI boot from the SD card slot. I'm running the operating system from a fast USB stick. And I've also got Ethernet coming through this USB adapter. So this is a USB hub with an Ethernet connection. So that's giving me internet. I also always use an external sound card. I use this so that I can separate the sound for my videos, and you can see I've got mouse and keyboard in there. But yeah, actually wasn't expecting to get this version of Windows up and running on a Raspberry Pi 5 especially. Obviously if you have one of the Rockchip devices, you'll have less steps because you can just use that one device. But it does seem to run faster on the Raspberry Pi 5. I have put the clock speed up on the Orange Pi, but the results I feel I'm getting, I haven't done a proper speed test, so I need to really do that to compare them properly, but it does feel snappier on a Raspberry Pi 5. Okay, so I hope all this helps. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.